Two sounds carry across a beach. One is a harsh, rolling roar that almost blends into the surf. The other is a hard wooden knock, tap, 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 that cuts the air like a metronome. The first belongs to an American Browning machine gun chewing through a long belt. The second comes from a Japanese heavy gun the Allies nicknamed the woodpecker. Same sands, same sun. Two very different voices. Why did the United States and Japan choose such different designs? And how did those choices shape real fights from the jungles to the atolls? Tonight, we open the story with the ideas behind the metal. Before we argue which gun won more moments, we ask a simpler question. What problem was each army trying to solve? War rewards the side that can keep a lane shut. 5 seconds more, 10 seconds more, while squads crawl or rush. Machine guns buy time. Not glorious time, not cinematic time, but the kind of time that saves a life and turns a position from almost ready into ready. By the late 1930s, both the US and Japan had plenty of experience with automatic fire, and both had watched how heat, dust, and weak logistics kill rifles just as surely as bullets do. Each country wanted a gun that could sit in a fight and keep working. But they came at the goal from different angles, different industries, different supply chains, different battlefields imagined in the heads of planners. America's answer was a belt-fed workhorse. It started as a cousin of a heavy, water-cooled gun from World War I and was trimmed and tuned for mobility. The Browning. The infantry would carry into World War II. The M1919 was air-cooled to shed weight, driven by recoil, and fed by long belts that let a small team deliver steady bursts without constant reload breaks. It wasn't a single hero's weapon, it was a crew's tool. One man on the trigger, one feeding the belt and swapping parts, others hauling ammo and watching flanks. It could sit on a low, sturdy tripod on the ground, or be clipped into mounts on jeeps, half-tracks, tanks, even landing craft. The same gun body, the same action, just anchored wherever the fight needed it. In U.S. doctrine, that mattered. The gun followed the infantry and the vehicles, not the other way around. Listen to what the U.S. manual actually promised to the soldiers who carried it. It said plainly, "This gun is recoil-operated, belt-fed, air-cooled." It told them the standard belt for ground use held around 150 rounds, long enough to shape a minute of action, short enough to handle under stress. It warned them about heat and gave a conservative rule of thumb, about 60 rounds a minute for about half an hour before you risk overheating, if conditions are normal. That is doctrine on paper, turning into behavior in the field. Controlled bursts, long belts, crew discipline, and a plan for swapping barrels and relocating the moment the enemy starts ranging your muzzle flash. Ballistics are dry to read and very real in practice. The typical .30-06 ball round the Browning fired left the barrel at a little over 2,600 feet per second. Enough speed to carry lethal energy as far as your eyes could reasonably spot men in the open. With a belt pulling left to right through the receiver, the gun settled into a rhythm. Tap the trigger, count a breath, tap again. Heat management, lane control, and confidence. The United States built an army around that rhythm. Japan's answer began somewhere else. The French Hotchkiss school of thinking, refined by Japanese designers for Asia's long wars. Their heavy gun of record in World War II, the Type 92, was not fed by belts at all. It ate rigid metal strips that held 30 rounds each. The action was gas-operated. The whole package on its tripod weighed the kind of weight you count out loud before you lift. It was a serious planted machine, built to sit in a prepared slot and watch a path for hours. And the feed choice, the long line of little 30-round combs the crew kept sliding, set the gun's heartbeat. It fired well, it fired accurately, but every few seconds hands had to move, a new strip had to seat, the rhythm had to start again. This stop-start feeling is part of why Allied troops called its voice the woodpecker. That nickname isn't just folklore. Museums and veteran accounts recorded it. They also recorded a clever detail on the Japanese mount, carry poles. The tripod's legs were built to take fitted poles so two men could pick up the whole rig, already assembled, and shuffle it a short distance in firing position. For a defensive army trading space for time, this made sense. You dig the gun in, you sight the lane. If the situation turns, you and your mate shoulder the poles and move the gun as one piece, slowly, painfully, but without having to break it down. It's a small engineering choice that reveals a larger doctrine. We will fight from prepared ground and shift only as far and as fast as we must. There was another design choice with big consequences: lubrication. Japanese machine gun engineering often accepted that cartridges might need a touch of oil for smooth extraction. The Type 92 made that idea part of the system. As each round rode into position from its strip, a small internal oiler brushed it with a film of oil. In clean training, this helps. In dust, coral, and jungle grit, it's a gamble. Oil attracts dirt. Dirt invites stoppages. Crews could and did keep them running, but it raised the daily cost of reliability and made discipline, covers, and careful handling non-optional. The same technical manuals that Western intelligence circulated in 1944 noted that Japanese guns tended to rely on oilers, and Australian museum descriptions of recovered Type 92s still mention the oiler brushing each cartridge. That is not a knock on Japanese skill. It's a snapshot of a different design path, one that traded some field tolerance for extraction insurance. Step back a pace and compare the shapes of the two answers. The Browning is a belt machine. That single fact changes the flow of a firefight. A gun team can lay out a belt, snap the cover, and work a lane with fewer reload pauses. Each pause in combat is a tiny hazard. Fewer pauses mean steadier pressure. The tripod sits low. The pintle and traverse elevation gear let the gunner right with fire, and the lighter total weight, gun and mount together, means an American crew can pick up and go before the enemy has dialed in too much mortar hate. The same receiver body can ride on a jeep a mile later. That matters in a war of landings, roadblocks, and quick moves. The Type 92 is a strip machine. That single fact also changes the flow. 30 rounds, then hands. 30 rounds, then hands. In a bunker with sandbags and a fixed field of fire, this cadence is fine. It even helps with fire discipline. In a fluid fight, those micro breaks add up. The mount is high and solid, with nice sighting options and even periscopic setups in some cases. The gun will do what you ask if you sight it well. But the weight and the feed system are honest about their purpose. Hold the lane you prepared. Don't chase. Make the enemy pay to cross a measured space. That's doctrine in steel. Why did each army end up here? Geography and logistics had a vote. The U.S. imagined a mobile army that lands, expands, and supplies itself with trucks and ships. Belted ammunition in boxes, cloth belts or links could be mass-produced and moved by motor. A medium gun that worked on ground tripods and in vehicles fit the way Americans planned to fight across two oceans. Japan fought long campaigns in China, then braced for island defenses where every pound had to reach by ship and hand. The Type 92's strip system was inherited from a family of guns that were simple to manufacture and robust in fixed positions, and the oiler choice reflects a desire to guarantee extraction even under marginal ammunition or chamber wear. Neither path was dumb. Each path matched a vision of the next war, visions that, by cruel chance, met each other in the Pacific. There's also the human side, the crew's experience behind each trigger. On a Browning, the assistant gunner minds the belt, clears snags, calls targets, and helps the gunner manage burst length so the barrel doesn't cook. On a Type 92, the assistant gunner's hands are always moving. Feed the next strip, seat it firmly, mind the oiler, watch the ejection path. Both teams need discipline, and both can dominate a space. But the feel of the job is different. One rhythm favors sustained fire with fewer interruptions. The other favors deliberate bursts punctuated by reload beats. One thrives on the ability to remount quickly on a vehicle or shift the tripod fast. The other is strongest when the fight comes to the position it's already prepared to kill. Even the sound tells the story. The Browning's role is the sound of a long belt and a cooler barrel running short, controlled bursts. The Type 92's knock is the sound of 30-round strips and a gas system with its own tempo. Soldiers remember sounds long after they forget serial numbers. That's why woodpecker stuck. It isn't poetry, it's memory. By now you can see how doctrine lives inside hardware. A feed system is a tactical opinion made of steel. A tripod style is a theory about where the fight will happen. An oiler is a bet about what will jam first, a dry chamber in training or a dusty chamber in war. The United States bet on belts, mobility, and a gun light enough to go wherever the infantry went. Japan bet on a planted heavy gun that could be carried a little and fight a lot from fixed ground, with an extraction aid built in. Both bets made sense in 1932. The question is what happened when those bets met on real sand and real coral under real mortars. And that brings us to the cliff's edge. On paper, both guns fire rifle-caliber rounds at broadly similar speeds. On paper, both can reach out farther than most riflemen. On paper, their cyclic rates are close, but paper doesn't feel reload pauses, or sand in oil, or the strain of lifting a mount under fire. So in part 2, we'll take these designs off the blueprint and put them in the same fight, head-to-head under combat constraints. Which system keeps a lane closed longer with fewer interruptions? Which one actually wins a minute of battle when the belt runs low or the strip runs dry? The specs look close. The battlefield isn't. Join me in the next part, and we'll find out which voice on that beach held the last word. Two guns face the same lane. One chews steadily through a long belt, the other spits in short, hard bursts and pauses while hands move. The clock is running. Which team keeps that lane closed the longest, with the fewest interruptions? That's the only question that matters to the men trying to cross open ground. If you win even 30 more seconds of steady fire, your squad makes it. If you lose that window, somebody doesn't. Tonight we go head-to-head. America's Browning M1919 versus Japan's Type 92 woodpecker. Same beach, same dust. Different ideas about how a machine gun should work and how a crew should fight. From this point on, we measure everything by time on target. 24 to 32 laun. Head-to-head, how the mechanisms shape the minute. Start with the actions themselves. The American gun is the Browning M1919, recoil-operated, belt-fed, air-cooled. Those three words define its rhythm. Recoil operation means the gun's own kick cycles the parts. Belts mean you feed a long chain of cartridges left to right through the receiver. Air cooling keeps weight down, so an infantry crew can move the gun on a low tripod or clip it to a vehicle mount when the fight shifts. In plain language, longer burst between reloads, lighter kit to move, and the same receiver happy on a jeep or on the ground. Now the Japanese gun. The Type 92 is gas-operated and fed by rigid metal strips that hold 30 rounds each. A Hotchkiss pattern choice Japan kept and refined. The gun is precise and stable on its tripod, but the feed system forces a stop-start heartbeat. 30 rounds, then hands. 30 more, then hands again. In clean conditions, an internal oiler lightly coats each cartridge to help extraction. In real dust and grit, that oil can invite fouling unless a careful crew stays ahead of it. These are not trivia points. They are the cause of the sound Allied troops remembered, an unmistakable stutter that earned the nickname woodpecker. Reload tempo is where the minutes get decided. A Browning team can snap a 150-round woven belt into place and work a lane in controlled bursts. Fewer reloads mean fewer gaps, exactly what suppression is for. U.S. manuals even coached crews to pace fire for heat management, about 60 rounds a minute for roughly half an hour under normal conditions, so the gun could keep buying time without cooking itself. That is doctrine you can feel in the trigger. Short bursts, steady cadence, long belts. The Type 92 strip feed isn't wrong, it's a different bet. In a prepared position with measured arcs, those 30-round strips help enforce fire discipline. But in a fluid fight, every strip change is a small pause that stacks risk. And because the gun oils rounds as they feed, crews must keep dirt out or pay for it in stoppages. In the calm of a bunker, you can manage that. On coral and in jungle dust, the margin shrinks. Mobility is the third lever. The Browning M1919 on the M2 tripod is compact and low, with traverse and elevation gear made for righting with fire. The same gun body was expected to ride vehicles as needed, and the manual even states that motorized and mechanized units commonly mounted it, with a ground tripod carried for dismounted use. A small team can shift position before mortars walk in or fix the gun onto a jeep to keep pace with an advance. That flexibility multiplies the value of each gun across a day's fighting. By contrast, the Type 92's tripod has its own clever answer. Carry poles that let two men lift the whole unit, gun and mount, as one piece for short moves. It's honest about its purpose. Built to be planted, sighted, and then shuffled in short, tiring steps when the line bends. Again, that makes sense for an army planning to hold ground it has already measured and prepared. But it is a heavy truth for crews who need to sprint. If you compress all those design choices into 1 minute of combat, here's what you get. The Browning minute is bursts on demand with fewer reload holes and easier displacement when the enemy answers back. The Type 92 minute is precise, disciplined fire in a cone you measured yesterday. Strong in place, but peppered with tiny reload seams you must cover with a second gun or a rifle team. That is what head-to-head really means. Not muzzle velocity on paper, but how many seconds of pressure your crew can actually buy when people are moving and shouting. How crews turned design into control. American units treated the M1919 as the company's backbone. It lived in the weapons platoon, but the same receiver showed up everywhere, on half-tracks, tanks, jeeps, landing craft, so machine gun fire could travel with the attack and drop to the ground when needed. Teams learned a simple pattern: gunner on the trigger, assistant minding the belt, and calling targets, ammo men keeping the next belt flaked and ready. When the lane had to move, they lifted the low tripod and went, often remounting the same gun on a vehicle minutes later. The design supported the doctrine: keep the base of fire mobile, keep the belts coming, keep the lane closed. Japanese practice with the Type 92 fit a different picture. The heavy gun was a position weapon first. Crews sighted it carefully, often with optical or periscopic sights, and built a field of fire the enemy would have to cross. The carry pole system let two men budge the tripod and gun together, but only in short stages. Reload rhythm was part of the job. The assistant set fresh 30-round strips and watched the oiler do its work. When the fight came to that lane, the gun did what it was built to do: cut measured space with measured bursts. Veterans on the Allied side remembered the sound long after the details faded, which is why museum records still preserve woodpecker as the common nickname. The doctrine was plain. Put both doctrines on the same battlefield, and you see why reload cadence and belt length quietly change outcomes. With a Browning, a single 150-round belt can carry a short rush or cover a withdrawal without a reload break in the middle of it. With a Type 92, leadership must stage gun so the pauses can be covered. Overlapping arcs, second gun ready, riflemen trained to fill the micro gaps. Both armies knew that. Their kit made them pay the price in different places. In mobility, the trade is the mirror image. The U.S. gun pays with more barrel heat to manage, rewarded by faster displacement. The Japanese gun pays in weight and feed handling, rewarded by rock-steady precision in prepared sights. And that takes us to the only test that really matters: the real terrain of the Pacific. Beaches, jungle trails, dust, and coral, where those tiny design choices became minutes won or lost. We'll take these two voices into that environment next and ask a blunt question. When the sand and the heat get a vote, which gun keeps a lane closed longer with fewer interruptions? Now let's test these choices in the Pacific: beaches, jungle trails, dust, and coral. The Pacific doesn't shout its secrets. It whispers them. Through the way a bunker's loophole faces the surf, the way a gun team lays out its ammo, the way a lane stays closed for 30 seconds longer than anyone thought possible. On a strip of coral like Betio or a muddy trail on Guadalcanal, two guns faced the same problem: keep men from crossing open ground. One chewed through a belt with a steady roll. The other hammered in short, wooden knocks, then paused while hands moved. The clock was running. Which team owned more of that minute? Start on a real beach with a real calendar. Tarawa, 20 to 23 November 1943, wasn't just a fight, it was an exam of ideas. The island defenses were built for all-around fire, heavy weapons dug into timber and concrete, lanes measured to the yard. Along parts of the coast, the Japanese relied on 7.7mm heavy machine guns, the same family we've been talking about, to rake the approaches. Those guns didn't appear by accident. They were the backbone of planned beach denial. Look inside one of those positions and you see the shape of Japan's bet. The Type 92 sits high and planted, strip feed at the ready, crew trained to keep 30 rounds flowing, 30 more, and 30 more again. In photos from Betio, you can still see a Type 92 laid into a bunker, business-like, pointed down a killing lane. In a fixed fight, it is lethal, but its rhythm is honest. Bursts, then hands. Now put the American answer across from it. The Browning M1919 is a belt machine, recoil-operated, air-cooled, meant to live on a low tripod or jump onto a vehicle mount when needed. U.S. manuals coached crews to run 150-round belts, to work in short, controlled bursts, and to mind heat so the gun could keep buying time, about 60 rounds a minute for about half an hour under normal conditions. That guidance sounds dry on paper. On a beach, it becomes the difference between one reload pause and 5. Once you see those two rhythms, you start noticing a pattern that repeats from Guadalcanal's ridgelines to Tarawa's seawall. The belt-fed Browning keeps a lane shut with fewer holes in the coverage, and it can pick up and move before the mortars walk in. The strip-fed Type 92 dominates the sector it was sighted to kill, but its minute is peppered with tiny gaps. Every strip change a heartbeat where someone must cover. Japanese doctrine tried to answer that with overlapping arcs and with a clever tripod that could be lifted on carry poles for short shifts, but the big picture didn't change. The gun was built to be planted, not chased. The nickname Allied troops gave it, woodpecker, wasn't poetry. It was memory of that stop-start sound. The museums that care for these guns still record that name, along with the tripod's carry rod system. That brings us to the heart of the verdict. In this theater, outgunned really meant out-sustained. 3 frictions decided it. First, reload friction. 1 Browning belt equals 5 Type 92 strips. Every strip change is a micro-pause, and under fire those pauses stack up. A U.S. gun team could ride a single belt across a squad's short rush or withdrawal, then swap before the next push. The Japanese crew had to build its plan around frequent handwork, fine in a bunker, harder in a fluid street-to-seawall fight. Second, environmental friction. Japanese machine gun engineering accepted oiling as a way to guarantee extraction. The Type 92 literally brushes a film onto each round as it feeds. In clean training, that helps. In coral grit and jungle dust, it's a gamble. Oil attracts dirt, dirt invites stoppages, and crews pay for reliability with even tighter discipline. That isn't a flaw of character. It's a design trade that showed its cost on Pacific ground. Third, mobility friction. The Browning's lower, lighter ground mount let small teams lift and go, or remount the same receiver on a jeep or landing craft, and keep machine gun fire traveling with the attack. The Type 92's tripod could be lugged on poles, smart for a short bound, punishing for a sprint. In a campaign built on beachheads and quick shifts, that flexibility mattered more every mile the Marines and soldiers advanced. Put those frictions back onto a timeline like Tarawa, and you can almost feel the minutes move. In one direction, long belts, short bursts, steady pressure, quick displacements. In the other, hard, precise bursts from a position that was measured yesterday, punctuated by hand-fed reloads that doctrine tried to cover with overlapping guns. Both sides fought with courage and skill. Both guns were reliable in their own ways. But island hopping rewarded the team that could make suppression feel continuous with the smallest crew and the fewest interruptions. So here is the simple answer to our core question. In real operations, the M1919 delivered more usable fire over time. Not because its bullet was magically stronger, but because its belt-fed system and portable mount created longer, cleaner windows of control. The Type 92 remained a tough, accurate position gun and served long after the war in Asia, proof of how solid the core design was. Yet on beaches like Betio and trails like those on Guadalcanal, the Browning's little advantages added up to battlefield control. Listen again to the 2 sounds carried on the wind. One rolls, one knocks. What you're hearing are 2 bets about how a war would be fought. In the Pacific, the bet on belts, mobility, and flexible mounts won the minutes that mattered. Stay with us for the epilogue, where we follow those minutes into the post-war world, how the belt-fed lesson shaped the general-purpose machine guns that replaced both of these icons and rewired infantry tactics for a new century.